Alara Thorne stood in the center of the living room, her makeup flawless, her voice as cold as ice, but a triumphant smirk played on her lips. I froze for a beat, saying nothing. "Don't play dumb," she said, crossing her arms, her eyes dripping with contempt. "You know this marriage has been a sham for years. I'm done settling." I looked down, my expression hardening, a flicker of feigned sadness in my eyes. "Alara, why all of a sudden?" "Don't call me Alara," she snapped. "You don't have a right." She twisted the wedding ring off her finger and tossed it onto the glass coffee table with a sharp clink. "The one that got away? He's back. I'm going back to him." I stood rooted to the spot, my voice low. "Is it Silas Reed?" "That's right." Alara's brow arched in a look of pure victory. "You can't even begin to compare to him. He's the one I've always wanted. You, Ray, just a useless husband I've been supporting. A man who doesn't even own a decent suit. Why should I waste any more of my time on you?" I clenched my jaw, pretending to be devastated. "I won't sign, Alara. I can't lose you." She laughed as if I told a joke. The mocking, ugly sound. She pulled a check from her designer handbag and slapped it down in front of me. "This is your severance packet. $1 million. Sign the papers and get out. You should be thanking me." I stared at the check. My face a mask of shock, my fingertips trembled and my eyes seemed to shimmer with unshed tears. "All right," I said. My voice hoarse, as if I'd been crushed by the weight of it all. "I'll sign." She rolled her eyes. "Should have just done that from the start, so pathetic." She turned and walked into the bedroom to pack. I stared down at the check, the corner of my mouth slowly curling into a smile. This marriage was finally over. I had been playing a part for far too long. It was time to walk off stage 2 hours later. We were on the courthouse steps, the sun beat down relentlessly. I stood before the brick facade next to Alara, who clutched the signed divorce papers in her hand, her face a portrait of impatience. I kept my head low, my shoulders shaking slightly, playing the part of a broken man abandoned by fate. "Are you done crying yet?" she asked, annoyed. "Don't embarrass me out here." I sniffled. "Goodbye, Alara. Don't ever contact me again," she said, turning on her heel and stalking toward the parking lot without a backward glance. I took a moment to compose myself, then followed her. My face now a blank slate. Just then, a silver Audi pulled up to the curb. The door opened and a man in a crisp white shirt stepped out. He was handsome, with sharp eyes and a confident smile, as he held out his hands to Alara. "Alara!" "Silas!" A light ignited in Alara's eyes. She rushed forward and threw her arms around him. "And that." I narrowed my eyes. "Well, what do you know? The old flame returns and the villain gets her wish." I walked straight up to them before they could react. I grabbed Silas's hand and shook it firmly. "Buddy, I can't thank you enough." Silas froze. "What? What did you say?" I beamed, a picture of pure relief. "You're taking her off my hands. I'm finally free." "Man, I owe you a beer for this." Alara stood stunned, her face twisting in disbelief. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I held up my hands, my expression breezy. "Nothing's wrong. I'm thrilled. You said you were escaping a nightmare, right? Well, turns out I'm the one who just got out of prison." A flicker of panic crossed Alara's face. She had clearly expected a different scene. He pictured me begging, clinging to her like a lost puppy even after the papers were signed. But the smile on my face now was brighter than a midday sun. Silas awkwardly pulled his hand away, whispering to Alara, "Is he having a breakdown?" I laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't worry about me. I've never been better. I wish you to the best, though honestly with this combination, you're going to need it. Adrian." Alara hissed, her voice sharp with fury. I looked back at her, my gaze no longer filled with the quiet suffering and humility of our marriage, but with a calm, chilling indifference. "Alara, you always wanted to see me leave, didn't you? Now you have your wish? Accept." I paused, the smirk playing on my lips. "You're going to regret this." Her mouth opened. Before she could say another word, I turned my back on them and walked away without a second glance. My phone buzzed. I answered it, my tone flat. "It's done, time to come back." A respectful voice answered from the other end. "Yes, sir." I let out a soft chuckle and squinted at the horizon. The wind was strong, the sun was hot, but I knew starting today, I was finally free. Is he out of his mind? Lara gripped Silas's arm, glaring at my retreating figure. Grinding her teeth in frustration, Silas frowned. He seemed different. Different? My ass. She seethed. He's a pathetic loser. What? Is he going to do now that I've divorced him? Suddenly become a king? Silas didn't answer, just washed my back with a thoughtful expression. For some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that my gaze was entirely too calm. As if I had known exactly how this would all play out. Lara scoffed and looped her arm through his. "Forget him, he has an nobody trying to rise out of us. We can finally be together now." Silas nodded, flashing a practiced smile. But the doubt lingered in his mind. The first day after the divorce, I woke up early, went through my morning routine, and walked out of the house that was once ours. The morning breeze on my face felt like freedom. I got into the back of a car where a man in a sharp suit was already waiting. He nodded respectfully. "Mr. Thorn, Apex Tower?" I said. "Yes, sir." 10 minutes later, the black Mercedes-Benz pulled up smoothly in front of the Apex conglomerate headquarters. I pushed through the glass doors. Every employee in the lobby rose to their feet in unison. "Good morning, Mr. Thorn," they chorused. I gave a slight nod and walked toward my private elevator, my face impassive. The Apex conglomerate, one of the commercial titans of Crestwater, with interests spanning finance, technology, and real estate. And I was the man who secretly pulled all the strings. I had chosen to disappear, to marry into the Thorn family and live as a dependent, all to honor a deathbed promise to my father, to watch Thorn Industries from the inside. For 3 years, I endured humiliation, playing the part of a fool. Waiting for the right moment. Now she let me go herself. It was finally time to take off the mask. The elevator shot to the top floor. My assistant was waiting with a report. "Mr. Thorn, 3 firms are requesting meetings to discuss potential partnerships. Also, Thorn Industries is showing signs of a cash flow crisis. Several key shareholders who are backing them are beginning to pull their investments." A small smile touched my lips. "Keep up the pressure. Don't rush them too quickly. I want to see how long it takes for her to come begging." Understood. Meanwhile, Lara had just woken up to a frantic call from her secretary. "Miss Thorn, it's a disaster. Bruce's Capital just pulled all their funding, and 3 key members of the project team walked out with them." "What?" Lara was instantly awake. "We just signed a long-term contract. They cited an internal strategy shift. They said they no longer see our project as viable." Lara's face went pale with anger. She immediately called the investment head at True Source, but his response was cold. "I'm sorry, Miss Thorn. The market is what it is." He hung up on her. Lara threw her phone across the room in a fit of rage. "Are they insane? Are they trying to ruin my company just because I got a divorce?" The first person who came to mind was Adrian. No, impossible. She was a spineless house husband who couldn't even handle a business dinner. How could he possibly influence these powerful capital firms? And she remembered my last words at the courthouse. "You're going to regret this." Wow. A chill shot up her spine that evening. She stood by her floor-to-ceiling window staring into the night, when Silas's voice came from behind her. "You've had a long day. Come and relax." Lara turned to him, her eyes filled with frustration. "Didn't you say you had a big project you were working on? Weren't you about to close a new round of funding?" "That's the plan," Silas said, sinking into the sofa and rubbing his temples. "But a few of my investors suddenly got cold feet, said the market dynamics have shifted. Alara's heart skipped a beat. Hey, pulled out too? They hadn't committed yet, but the term sheets we'd agreed on were suddenly cancelled. Her anxiety rising, she snapped. I thought you were supposed to be so brilliant. You were top of your class. Everyone loved you. You had all the answers. Didn't you say you could handle anything? Silas's pride was wounded. His face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? Are you blaming me? I'm not. Yes, you are, Silas said, standing up. Alara, I came back to build a future with you, not to be your scapegoat. Alara froze, wanting to explain, but Silas had already stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. She suddenly remembered how for 3 years Adrian had endured her cold shoulders and angry words no matter what she said. He would just quietly absorb it. He would bring her food when she worked late, run to the pharmacy in the middle of the night when she was sick, and sit with her in silence while she cried, letting her vent her frustrations. But now that man was gone, she picked up her phone and opened Instagram. A news notification popped onto her screen. Apex conglomerate chairman Adrian Thorne has confirmed his return to full-time management of the company. Her mind went blank. Her breathing stopped. Apex, the conglomerate she had once pulled every string she had to get a meeting with, only to be flatly denied. She stared at the familiar name on the screen, her body rigid. Ethan Thorne, he wasn't a loser. He never was. She suddenly realized that she might have just made the biggest mistake of her life. I sat in my penthouse office, the city lights twinkling below, swirling the red wine in my glass. My assistant knocked and entered, a smile on his face. Alara Thorne has started calling our old network of shareholders, trying to pull some strings to renegotiate the deals. I smiled faintly. Tell them sure, she can come see me. Do you want her on her knees? Not yet, they said, downing the wine in one gulp, my eyes sharp. Let her first fully understand the meaning of you reap what you sow. Alara was in a full-blown panic. In just 2 days, our company had been hit by a tidal wave of withdrawn investments and canceled projects. Even her most loyal vice president was now secretly contacting shareholders, looking for an exit strategy. For the first time, she felt like she was standing on a crumbling cliff with no one willing to catch her. It all started the day after she divorced Adrian. Refusing to believe it, she decided to take matters into her own hands and salvage the situation. She took a taxi to the office of a partner firm. He had assumed her old connections would be enough to smooth things over. But the moment she stated her purpose, the executive gave her a distant, polite smile. Miss Thorne, it's not that we don't want to give you a chance. It's just that the power behind your family is a bit thin. What do you mean? She asked. Frowning, the man simply handed her a list. At the top, printed in bold, were 2 words. Apex conglomerates. These 4 companies were recently acquired by Apex. All project approvals have been transferred to Adrian Thorne's desk. Alara froze. She looked down at the name on the list, and the world started to go dark at the edges. She finally understood the crisis at her company wasn't because of a mistake she'd made in her strategy. It was because from the very beginning, an invisible hand had been slowly closing a net around her. And that hand once belonged to the man who lived in her house, cooked in her kitchen, slept in her bedroom, the man she had casually dismissed as a pathetic loser. She felt a mix of disbelief and a rising tide of fear. Back at her office, she sought out Silas. You should try to contact Adrian, she said, choosing her words carefully, trying to keep her expression calm. Silas was scrolling through his phone on the sofa. Are you crazy? Why would I contact him? Alara forced a smile. Your old acquaintances. After all, maybe he'd be willing to help us out. Didn't you say he was a good-for-nothing? Silas put down his phone. His gaze complicated. You used to look down on him, and now you want to use him. Alara's face flushed, her eyes darting away. That's not what I meant. I was just saying he is your buddy, right? Silas caught the sarcasm in her voice, and his expression soured. In truth, he'd felt something was off for a while now. At the courthouse, Adrian's bizarrely cheerful line, "Buddy, I can't thank you enough. It made his skin crawl. What kind of man smiles at his rival on the day of his divorce? Looking back, it wasn't an emotional breakdown. It was a calculated move in a game he didn't even know he was playing. If you want to contact him, you do it yourself, Silas said, getting up to leave. I'm not about to go groveling to him. Alara opened her mouth but found she had nothing to say as he sat alone in a vast, empty office and was struck by a profound sense of loneliness as useless as she thought Adrian was. He used to call her every day to ask if she was hungry or tired when she worked late. He'd show up with hot takeout when she was nervous before a big meeting. He'd be waiting by the elevator with a bottle of water at the time. She'd taken it all for granted, even found his concern to be annoying and cheap. But now, with everyone gone and even Silas growing cold, she realized how much she missed the feeling of being cared for. She tried calling Adrian's old number. Type. A recorded message informed her it was no longer in service driven by desperation. She went to Apex Star. The receptionist stopped her at the front desk. Alara handed over her business card with a practiced humble smile. Could you please let Adrian Thorne know that I'm here to see him? Tell him it's Alara Thorne. The receptionist smiled politely. Hello, Miss Thorne. Mr. Thorne's not taking any personal appointments today. Alara stiffened, her voice rising. I'm his ex-wife. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, her smile never wavering. Mr. Thorne's instructions were clear, especially not his ex-wife. Alara's face went white after a few seconds of stunned silence. She turned and fled, feeling like a complete failure. She got home, her emotions stretched to their breaking point. Around 900. She couldn't resist any longer and drove to Adrian's old place, a modest apartment she had once despised. It was now empty. A neighbor told her, "Oh, Mr. Thorne? He moved out a while ago, said his circumstances had changed and he needed a new place. I hear he's living in one of those mansions in the South Hills now. Has 3 different cars." Alara's sight twitched, and an unfightable feeling churned in her stomach sitting in the back of the car on the way home. Her mind was a chaotic mess. She muttered to herself. Who is he? Was I really that wrong about him? The city lights blurred past the window, but her world was slowly fading to black. She once thought she had discarded a useless man. Now she knew she had personally thrown away a gold mine. The most bitter irony was that the gold mine had tried time and time again to warm her cold world. She had simply never deemed it worthy of her attention. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Ma'am, should I take you straight home? Alara closed her eyes, her voice heavy with fatigue. No, take me to the South Hills, to the Villa District. She wasn't ready to give up. She needed to ask him, to face Adrian. Were you lying to me this whole time? Did you ever even take me seriously? Even though deep down she already knew the answer, the Villa District in the South Hills was a world of manicured lawns and quiet luxury, each mansion radiating an aura of light, untouchable wealth. Alara stood before the gates of Adrian's new home, staring at the black Maybach parked in the driveway 3 years ago. She had sneered at the car, calling it too corporate. Now its presence felt suffocating. A security guard stopped her at the gate. Ma'am, do you have an appointment? I'm a friend of Adrian Thorne's. The guard offered a polite, impenetrable smile. Mr. Thorne isn't seeing any friends today. Alara gritted her teeth. Tell him Alara Thorne is here. I used to be his ex-wife. The guard interrupted, his tone still perfectly courteous. Then you're definitely not getting in. Her face turned ashen. All she could do was watch the warm lights flicker inside the mansion. Knowing she would never again reach the man who had once fixed her leaky faucets, unbeaten instant raiment with her, the man who had silently shouldered all her burdens. She used to walk through his front door without a thought. Now she didn't even have the right to approach it. Defeated, Alara left when she got home. She found Silas sitting on the living room sofa, his face a thundercloud. "Where have you been?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Meeting with a client," she lied, kicking off her heels. Her feet ached. "Were you with Adrian?" Silas's eyes pinned her to the spot. Alara stiffened, her voice turning cold. "Do I need to report my whereabouts to you now?" Silas shot up from the sofa, his voice dropping to a frigid whisper. "Alara, do you not get what our relationship is? And not your obedient little lapdog." She glared back at him. "What's that supposed to mean? You think you can still act so high and mighty?" Silas sneered. "You're divorced. Our company is about to go under, and I'm the one out there trying to manage your debts. How dare you run off to see another man?" Alara's face contorted with anger. "I want to see him for the company. I was wrong to ever think you could handle this." With a loud crash, Silas swept a cup off the table. "You better not regret the choice you made. I already do." Alara's voice was ice. "If I could go back in time, I never would have let you take Adrian's place." The air crackled with tension. They stared at each other, a breath away from tearing each other apart. Alara grabbed her bag, stormed into the bedroom, and slammed the door the moment it clicked shut. She finally broke. She slid down the door, buried her face in her hands, and let the tears flow. His wasn't love, it was a delusion. He had thought Silas was her ideal, her ticket to freedom, a worthy replacement. She never realized he was just a superficial, arrogant opportunist, and the person who had truly stood by her for 3 years. She had pushed him away herself. That man never spoke of love, but he had quietly shielded her from every storm, from fixing the plumbing to saving her company, from buying her breakfast to waiting in the car for her late at night. It was she who had crushed that silent, steady love under her heels. He opened the photo gallery on her phone and found a picture she'd forgotten was there. It was from a winter years ago. She had been sick, and Adrian had quietly made her a ginger tea, not wanting to wake her. He had left it on the nightstand, sending her a picture with the text, "Drink this when you wake up." In the photo, a hand rested on the steaming mug. It was a strong hand, long-fingered and well-defined. She had once scorned that hand as rough and unrefined now. Looking at it, her eyes welled up. "Back in my villa, I sat in the study, previewing the day's financial reports. My assistant delivered an update. Silas Reed's 2 investment projects have completely collapsed. His funding has dried up, and he's barely staying afloat with cash infusions from what's left of Thorn Industries. He's still out there claiming he's about to close an $80 million round, but no one in the industry will even take his calls anymore." I nodded, my tone indifferent. "Keep squeeze him until the only person he has left is Alara." My assistant hesitated. "Alara Thorn was here tonight." I let out a dry, dismissive laugh. "I know." You're not going to see her." "Why would I?" I looked out the window at the glittering city, my voice low. She thought she was powered by love. The truth is, she was powered by my refusal to call her out on her bullshit. Now I'm calling her out. Just set my phone down on the desk. The lock screen was still the photo from the day of the divorce. The sun was bright. Alara and I stood outside the courthouse, and on the other side of the frame, I was shaking Silas's hand with a sincere smile, looking like a death row inmate who'd just been pardoned. From that day forward, I had made my decision. I would give her the freedom she wanted, and I would take back the dignity she could never appreciate. Late that night, Alara stood on her balcony and lit a cigarette. The wind made her cough. Silas was lying on the sofa, pretending to be asleep, but his eyes were wide open, a cold dread creeping into his ear. I saw it all clearly now. Alara didn't want him. She wanted a replacement, a fantasy, and that fantasy was shattering before her very eyes. Their relationship had been a transaction from the start, a mutual use agreement that had consumed them both. But what had truly been burned away was their dignity. Alara stubbed out her cigarette and whispered to herself, "Adrian, I finally get it. You weren't weak. You just couldn't be bothered to take me seriously. You really never loved me at all." Silas Reed was on the verge of a breakdown. The moment word of his fundraising efforts got out, He was shot down. He had assumed that with his connections, his intellect, and Alara's backing he would make a name for himself instead. He was met with rejection after rejection, each one grinding him further into the dirt. What drove him mad was that every time he met with a potential investor, the moment they heard the name Silas Reed, they would either laugh him off or deliver the final blow. "Sorry, we don't invest in anyone going up against Mr. Thorne." Mr. Hornham again, the man he had once seen as a pathetic loser. The man who had smiled at him outside the courthouse and said, "Thank you." The more he thought about it, the more he refused to accept it. He took his meticulously prepared project proposal and managed to get into the Apex Conglomerate's Public Investment Conference. The venue was dazzling, a gathering of Crestwater's most elite venture capitalists and power players. Silas stood in a corner, wearing a designer suit he had borrowed from Alara's closet. Trying to look calm as he networked, most people took one look at him and immediately steered clear, as if he were carrying a plague as the event neared its end. The massive screen at the front of the room lit up. The host's voice boomed with excitement. "And now, let's welcome the lead partner for this initiative, the chairman of the Apex conglomerate, Mr. Adrian Thorne." The room erupted in thunderous applause. Silas felt like he'd been struck by lightning. The color drained from his face and his project proposal slipped from his hand, scattering papers across the floor. He couldn't believe it. Adrian, the kept man who used to clean toilets in Alara's house and serve him tea, was the chairman of the Apex conglomerate, a man who could move billions of dollars with a single phone call and control half the business landscape of Crestwater. Adrian walked out from backstage in a dark gray suit, his stride confident, his expression serene, but his eyes were as sharp as knives the moment his gaze swept over Silas in the crowd. Silas froze solid. He instinctively looked down, feeling as if he were right back at the courthouse, facing that strangely smiling fool. Only now the man was no longer a loser. He was a predator who had finally decided to show his fangs. When the presentation ended, the entire room gave a standing ovation. People swarmed Adrian, thrusting business cards at him. Lining up to exchange a few words, Silas stood pressed against the wall, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He wanted to run. He saw Adrian walking slowly, deliberately toward him. "Silas," Adrian said, his voice so calm it was unnerving. Mr. Thorne?" Silas's mouth twitched as he offered a stiff hand. "Today has been quite a surprise." Adrian ignored the handshake. He simply put his hands in his pockets and stood before him. "I remember something you said once." Silas stared confused. "You said, sooner or later I'm going to replace him." Adrian recalled. "I'm looking at it now. You did. You took my place. The only thing is, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the apartment you live in, they were all paid for by me. You thought you won when you got Alara? Sorry, her success wasn't built on love. It was built on my generosity." Silas's face flushed a deep crimson. He tried to speak, but no words would come out. Adrian continued, his tone casual, conversational. "That suit you're wearing, it's the Armani she got from the house, isn't it? I had it custom made, never even got a chance to wear it. That MacBook you use, I bought it for her 3rd anniversary. She threw it in a closet without even opening the box. The apartment you're living in now, I could for it in cash. The deed is in her name." She said she was free, but the truth is, I was the one who let her go. Silas was completely stunned. He finally understood. He had been living like a king, but he had been standing on a foundation of gold that Adrian had left behind. He hadn't won. He was just living as the replacement for a man who had thrown it all away. He gritted his teeth and stepped closer, hissing, Why are you telling me this?" Adrian's eyes narrowed, his voice suddenly turned into ice. "Because I want you to know that every inch of ground you stand on today is ground I couldn't be bothered to occupy any longer. You didn't win, you just picked up my trash." Silas's face went pale and he swayed slightly. Just then, Adrian gave a subtle wave. His assistant immediately appeared with a thick file and handed several bound copies to Silas. These are the complete records of Alara using my personal accounts to fund foreign industries during our marriage. I want you to take these back to her." Silas was dumbfounded. "You gonna sue her? No?" Adrian's smile was even colder. "I want her to know that her success was never hers from the day she met me. Her confidence was a gift from me, and now I'm taking it back." With that, he turned and left, leaving Silas standing alone, his body cold, his head spinning. In that moment, he finally realized that his supposed comeback, his victory, his triumph, it was all just a meticulously crafted trap. And he wasn't just a joke. He was the punchline. When he got home, he threw the documents on the table in front of Alara and sneered, "Why don't you tell me just how much of his money you really spent?" Alara opened the file page after page. She saw her own signature on contracts, authorizations, and transfer records. She thought he would never care about her and trembled, and the papers scattered across the floor. Her face was paler than death, and in that instant, she understood Adrian wasn't the husband she lost. He was the entire life she had thrown away late that night. Alara sat by the window, a glass of red wine, and touched beside her the documents Adrian had sent back with Silas were scattered across the coffee table. Every transfer record, every signed authorization was a thorn. Each line of numbers, each signature, was another nail hammering her to a pillar of shame. She never imagined the loser husband she had scorned had, for 3 years, been quietly wrapping her entire company around his little finger. Her supposed independence, her carefully crafted image as a powerful businesswoman, it was all a fiction propped up by a man silently covering her losses. Now that the truth was exposed, she saw it clearly. Her confidence, her success, her entire sense of self was a lie, and the real winner had already walked away. Not even bothering to give her a backward glance, she took a sip of wine, a glint of determination in her eyes. This couldn't be how it ended. She had lost too much. She couldn't lose Adrian. Till she opened her phone and found his contact, the profile, which had never been updated, now had a new picture. The silhouette of a man standing alone under a lamp, nursing a drink, looking distant and cold. After a moment's hesitation, she made the call. It rang for a long time before he finally answered. "Hello." His voice was deep but void of any emotion. "Adrian," her own voice trembled. "Can we meet?" "What do you want?" She bit her lip, forcing her voice into a soft register. I want to start over with you." A few seconds of silence. Then a soft, humorless laugh. "You want to start over, or you want me to bail you out?" "That's not what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean." Adrian cut her off, his tone like ice. "You lost everything, realized I was your only real lifeline, and now you want to come back. What do you take me for? I backup plan? A stepping stone?" Alara's eyes reddened, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know I was wrong. I don't see you for who you were. And what if you had?" he countered coolly. "Do you think I'd still give you a chance? Do you have any idea what these last 3 years were like for me? Do you know how I felt every time you screamed at me? Every time you looked at me with disgust? You thought I was weak? No. I just couldn't be bothered to argue. It wasn't that I couldn't fight back. It was that you weren't worth proving myself to. And now you want another chance?" he scoffed. "It's too late." "Adrian." Alara's voice broke into a sob. "I'm so sorry. I truly regret it. You could get on your knees and beg, and it wouldn't make a difference." Click. He hung up. Alara clutched her phone, her body slumping to the floor this time. The grief wasn't an act she had lost. Utterly and completely. The next morning, Silas woke up to see the living room littered with shredded documents, and Alara sitting on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen. He let out an annoyed sigh. "Did you call him? Did you beg?" Alara didn't respond. "Just said into space," Silas sneered. "You've got some nerve." He kicks you to the curb and you go crawling right back to him. Alara finally looked at him. "Shut up." "What? Did I strike a nerve?" Now you finally realize who the real man is? Wasn't it just a few months ago you were telling me I was your one and only? I was blind. She shot back. Ah, Silas slammed his hand on the table. The only reason you're still talking to me is because you have nowhere else to go. And Lara stared at him, her eyes filled with contempt. You're not even a tenth of the man he is. Silas lunged, smashing his fist on the table. You really want to see me walk out that door? Go, Elara said, standing up to face him. Go ahead you, Ray nothing but a parasite anyway. A joke who fantasized about being a king you. You can't even support me, who the hell do you think you are? Shut your mouth. Silas swung his hand and slapped her hard across the face. Elara froze, her hand flying to her cheek. This was her knight in shining armor. This was the man she had thrown everything away for. She had called Adrian weak, but she had never imagined that the most pathetic, spineless man was the one she had chosen. Silas stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Elara was left alone in the silent apartment, her face burning, her eyes empty. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't even manage a smile that evening. Adrian sat at the head of a conference table in his new office. His new assistant, a poised and efficient woman, was presenting the second quarter investment strategy. He listened, his expression calm as sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows. Miss Thorne has been removed from the board of Thorne Industries, the assistant reported. The company has filed for bankruptcy restructuring. Silas Reed is under investigation for securities fraud and has been blacklisted by multiple financial institutions. Adrian nodded. Let them tear each other apart. The assistant paused. Elara Thorne she was seen kneeling outside the company entrance today. Security has a video. Adrian didn't look up from his papers. Delete it. Yes, sir. After a moment, he finally lifted his head, his voice quiet. She's not worth it. His assistant was taken aback for a second. Ken she understood this man wasn't heartless. He had simply and completely excised the people who weren't worthy from his life at the same time. Elara sat in the back of a taxi, her clothes stained with dust and rain. She had knelt on the pavement for an hour, only to be handed a notice. Unauthorized individuals are prohibited from entering the building. Her phone buzzed. An old, muted account had just posted a new update. It was Adrian. He had posted the picture from the day of the divorce, the one where he was shaking Silas's hand, grinning from ear to ear. The caption read, "The best thing that ever happened to me was he taking her off my hands." Elara stared at the post for a long time, until her ears blurred the screen. The night air was warm at the Elysian Club. Crestwater's most exclusive private venue tonight was the annual charity gala, a summit of the city's most powerful figures in business, politics, and entertainment. Flashbulbs popped as a line of black cars delivered the city's elite onto the red carpet. The media was cordoned off. A sea of cameras and microphones. Adrian Thorne, dressed in a black, custom-tailored suit, entered through a private entrance. At his side was his assistant, a tall, elegant woman whose sharp competence was a statement in itself. Every head in the room turned. He was calm, confident, a faint, polite smile on his lips. The event host rushed forward. "Mr. Thorne, it's an honor to have you with us." "Well," Adrian nodded and was escorted to the central VIP table. The seat of honor. This gala wasn't just about philanthropy. It was an official anointment, a confirmation of one's place in the city's inner circle. The cameras focused on Adrian, their flashes relentless, and on the edge of the crowd Elara stood watching, her eyes fixed on him. She wore a white evening gown, her makeup perfect, but she felt like an imposter. She had managed to get in by convincing an acquaintance to give her a temporary press assistant's pass from the fringes of the Grand Hall. She watched Adrian hold court, the center of a universe that had once been hers to command. Now, she was separated from it by an invisible wall. She instinctively straightened her dress, trying to muster the courage to approach the moment. She took a step toward the VIP section. The security guards blocked her path. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This area is restricted." "I know him," she whispered. "We know who you are," one of the guards said. Not unkindly, but his tone was firm. "You are not permitted entry." Elara froze, her head dropping in shame. She was once his wife with a single word. He would have silenced a room for her. Shielded her from any harm. Now she couldn't even get close to him. She stood in the shadows, an outcast from a life she had once taken for granted. Watching the man she had trampled on become the star everyone else looked up to, she wouldn't accept it grind in her teeth. She found a side entrance and slipped into the backstage corridor. Reserved for VIPs, it was quieter. Here she saw Adrian in a low-voiced conversation with a few other executives. She walked toward him. Hearth wrote dry. "Adrian." He turned at the sound of his name. He showed no surprise, as if he had expected her to appear. "Elara," he said, his tone flat. She took a deep breath. Can we talk?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her for a few seconds before speaking. "What is there left to talk about?" Elara forced a smile. "I know I was awful to you, and I know you're not the same person you were." "That's right," Adrian nodded. "And you're not the same person you were either." She blinked. Stunned, he continued. "You've become anxious, desperate, and pathetic. You even learned to swallow your pride, but unfortunately for you, I'm not interested." Elara's eyes welled with tears, her voice trembling. "Is there really no chance for us? Don't you know how much I used to love you?" Adrian laughed. "You think that was love?" he asked. "No. I was a habit. I was just someone you were used to, taking care of you. It's like drinking a glass of water. It has no flavor, but it's familiar. But I've learned something since then. Plain water doesn't quench a real thirst, and it doesn't deserve a place at the table." Elara bit her lip so hard she could taste blood. "Then what do you want?" She pleaded. Adrian looked at her, his voice perfectly calm. "The freedom I want no longer includes you." Those words shattered her. She stood frozen in a hallway as he turned and walked back into the crowd, instantly enveloped by admirers. He was once her accessory. Now she wasn't even qualified to be in his shadow. When he never looked back, Elara slowly sank to the floor. Wrapping her arms around herself, she finally realized what her freedom had cost her. It was the price she paid for arrogantly throwing away the most valuable thing in the world. That world would never open its doors for her again. There would be no one left to turn off the lights for her, to bring her water, to bow his head. In silent services he had lost the man who loved her most. And that man, he had finally learned to love himself. The night was ink-black. Adrian sat alone in a wicker chair on his penthouse balcony. The city lights spread out like a carpet at his feet. A glass of whiskey sat untouched by his side. His assistant brought him a tablet. "Elara has been completely removed from Thorn Industries. Silas Reed's fraud case has been formalized, and his assets are being frozen." He nodded, picking up his phone to glance at a trending news story. Fallen idol Silas Reed, former socialite Paramore, facing multiple fraud allegations. The next story down was, Thorn Industries CEO exits market. Former glory fate. He looked at the headlines, smiled, and set the phone down. He had once lost sleep over those two names, had suppressed his anger and pride because of them. Now they felt like names of strangers. It was as if those 3 years of his life had never happened. His assistant asked quietly, "Will you be making a public statement about what?" Adrian gazed at the night sky. "They have nothing to do with me anymore." He picked up his phone again and opened his Instagram. The screen still showed the draft he'd saved. It was the photo a bystander had taken on the day of his divorce. He was in casual clothes, smiling, shaking Silas's hand in front of the courthouse. The angle was imperfect, the quality grainy, but it was real. In that moment, he had been truly, completely relieved. He hit post. The caption was simple. "The best thing that ever happened to me was he taking her off my hands." Within a minute, the post had dozens of likes. "Hey friend," commented, "the king is finally free." Another joked, "Nice handshake." "My turn next." He just smiled and didn't reply. It was the first personal post he had made in 3 years. It wasn't a show of force or to get revenge. It was a ritual, a final, definitive closing of a chapter. Meanwhile, Elara sat on the sofa in her rented apartment, staring at her phone. Someone had screenshot Adrian's post and sent it to a group chat. She clicked on it and stared in the photo. His smile wasn't forced. It wasn't a man pretending to be free. It was the genuine, unburdened expression of someone who had completely disentangled himself from her world. Her heart felt like it was being slowly shredded. For days, she had scrolled through her contacts, hoping for a message, any sign from him. Instead, she got this one post, one sentence saying nail in the coffin of her last hope. She finally understood. Adrian was gone. He had walked away cleanly, completely. Without a trace of nostalgia. There was no dramatic plot twist where he came back to her. No, I love you after all. Speech. There was only a quiet, indifferent goodbye, leaving her and their history behind. As the punchline to a joke, Silas burst through the door, his face dark with fury. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Now the entire city knows. You knelt outside his office. "You've made me a laughingstock." Elara didn't look at him. She just sat there, her eyes empty. Silas raged on. "Where are you now?" "I washed up ex-wife. He won't even look at being with you. Is like holding a live grenade." "Shut up," Elara said coldly. "Shut up." Silas laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think you have any right to talk to me like that? I should have seen it sooner. You're useless. A lost cause with a heart colder than your face. Get out." Elara stood up, her voice devoid of its former arrogance. "You want an scapegoat? Then get the hell out of my house. You'll regret this." Silas snarled, clenching his fists. "The day I get back on my feet." Elara let out a cold laugh. "You think you're Adrian? You think you're capable of a comeback?" She wrenched the door open. "You're not even worthy of imitating his shadow." Silas, seething, stormed out and slammed the door. The room was finally quiet. She sat back down, her phone still glowing with his posts. He didn't know how many times she'd read it, only that each time made it clearer. She had lost the man who made her soup, who fought her battles, who silently held up her entire world, and with 3 years of contempt. She had bought herself a single moment of his back. Turning away from her from now on, she would never be allowed back in his life or into his world. A night wind blew through the window, rustling the shredded contract pages on the floor. They flipped over one by one, like a silent judgment on her pride and her choices. She suddenly remembered something she had said to him 3 years ago. "You're a loser besides kissing my feet. What else can you possibly do?" Now she had her answer if he could make it so. She wasn't even worthy of Milan to see him again. Adrian sat in the back of his car, the city's glittering skyline passing by. The driver glanced in the rear-view mirror. "Home, Mr. Thorne?" "No," he said quietly. "Doctor by the old place?" The driver didn't ask why. Simply making a U-turn, the car moved through familiar streets until it stopped in front of the old apartment building where he had lived as a kept man. He got out and looked up at the window that had once been his. That place was the center of his world. For a reason he was willing to compromise everything. Now the person was gone and the feeling was gone. He smiled faintly, turned, and got back in the car.